Ever since the ancient Greeks and Romans, humans have been fascinated with the stars in the night sky. The ancient Greeks and Romans are the reason why so many celestial planets, moons, and stars have been named after Greek and Roman gods. Stories of gods and godlike beings were told throughout the stars in the night sky. Maps of the starry night sky were made from these stories, and the stories helped fuel humanity's interest in space and space exploration. Over many centuries, human interest in space grew exponentially, and once technology was advanced enough, humans could finally touch the stars. The most notable of events that took place with space travel was the newly found technology of rockets, the space exploration, or space race, and the Apollo missions. Although the ancient Greeks and Romans had very advanced societies, the technology was certainly not up to par with the technology that first put a person in outer space. At the turn of the 20th century, technology started to grow exponentially due to the advancements made with electricity, such as harnessing and controlling currents. The warfare of World War II changed the world largely due to the impressive scientific and technological advancements made. The thought of firing a missile and taking the enemy out from a long distance provoked the thought of a rocket. Wernher von Braun helped Nazi Germany develop a rocket called the V-2, which was later developed into a more powerful rocket called the Jupiter C, or Juno. This advancement of rockets also developed due to competition between two world powers, the United States and the Soviet Union. The Soviets developed a rocket called the R-7, which would later launch the first satellite into Earth's orbit. The V-2 rocket was the first man-made object to reach outer space, which reached an altitude of 176 kilometers. After the fall of Nazi Germany, the United States and the Soviet Union took German rocket scientists and technicians in hopes to create rockets that were more powerful than the V-2. As mentioned previously, the R-7 rocket created by the Soviet Union was the first rocket to successfully launch a satellite into Earth's orbit. The United States launched the first satellite, Explorer 1, shortly after the satellite Sputnik 1. The 1960s saw great achievements in space travel since starting in 1961 when Yuri Gagarin became the first person to orbit Earth. Eventually, in 1969, the first humans landed on the moon. The space race began in 1957, shortly after German scientists were taken to either the United States or the Soviet Union. The technology of the V-2 rocket was a great power that both countries knew could change the world for better or for worse. Having successful space missions could prove to the world that one country had an upper hand in warfare than another country. With this being known, both countries wanted to complete successful missions to space before the other country. The end goal was to land a man on the moon and have them return home safely. Throughout the space race, the Soviet Union was able to complete certain goals and missions either a few months or a year before the United States. In 1961, the Soviets launched a rocket carrying the first man around the Earth, and in 1962, the United States launched the first rocket that carried the second man around the Earth. The Soviet Union's astronaut, Yuri Gagarin, perished on his return back to Earth, but the United States astronaut, John Glenn, was able to return safely home. Apollo 8, a lunar mission led by the United States, marked the first time humans orbited the moon. And in 1969, the 11th Apollo mission marked the first time humans Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon and returned safely home, thus ending the space race. There were a total of 17 Apollo missions, so there were 6 more missions after the 11th. Although the space race had ended, the United States was not done exploring the lunar surface. Since the race ended, there was no longer much of a public interest in funding for NASA. The NASA program slowly started to decline. Apollo 17, the last Apollo mission, took place in 1972, and after the Apollo mission ceased to exist. It wasn't until a decade later, in 1981, when NASA made new strides with human travel. The creation of the space shuttle was a marvel because a space shuttle could land on the Earth and be reused. NASA slowly started to gain public interest again when the first civilian was to be launched in space. This was part of NASA's initiative to reach out to a younger target audience in hopes that one day a younger generation would lead the world in space travel. The launch of the Challenger shuttle did not go as planned, though, due to an explosion killing all members on board. In 1977, NASA also made great strides in deep space exploration with the launch of Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. These deep space probes were designed to travel far beyond Earth, past Jupiter and Saturn, and eventually outside the solar system. Much has been discovered and many achievements have been made ever since the ancient Romans and Greeks gazed upon the starry night sky and made stories up about the gods. The early days of the rocket helped to launch ideas of space travel that could one day exist. With the help of some competition between two world powers, those ideas eventually became a reality, from the first rocket to be launched into space to the first man to walk on the moon.